Hey, there you are. Welcome to the shop. Welcome to the shop. Back. Hey, hi, hey. 1977 Honda CB750 chopper hardtail. Man, this is a sweet, sweet bike. Picked it up for a song and a dance, and it does need a little bit of loving. Now, I do like some things that some folks did to it, but there are some things we've got to address. It is not road ready. The wiring, as you'll see in a moment, is a rat's nest, literally. The throttle is seized up, not working at all. The wiring and coil pack and just some things need to be addressed. So our plans for you and I, is to get this road ready so we can enjoy it this summer. Then this winter, when the riding season comes to an end, we're going to get it back on the lift. We're going to totally strip it down to the frame and build it up really, really pretty. We are going to powder coat the frame, probably redo the paints on the tank because there's some damage to it. Maybe a new sissy bar. We got a nice king and queen seat that we picked up for cheap on Marketplace that we're going to go ahead and fit to it. So there's some things that we're going to change. Let me get you peepers in here. We'll walk around it, see some of the issues we're going to have to address and talk about it. If you got a 750 and looking to do a chopper build, then this is the video for you. We will probably be doing an entire new wiring harness from scratch on this bike. I think that'd be better than messing with the wires that are in here, and I think we can route them a little better. But welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. So in this video, some of the things we're going to address, and boy, look at that paint in the sunlight. It's a little greasy and dull, but man, that's pretty. So pretty. Love the gold flake lines. Love that color. So some of the things I know we're going to have to address. There's no spark on this. When we got it, we kind of hooked some jump cables to it just to see if it would kick off and fire off. It did not. Of course, the throttle is stuck, seized tight and solid. I don't want to yank on it too much. So we'll have to pull these inline 4 carbs off and rebuild them definitely. Hope there's not too much junk in there. We're going to be going with some new boots because these, they have a little bit of rust to them, but they kind of match the style. So we might just kind of keep them, blow them out. At least the choke does seem to choke. So that's good. Coil packs are not to be mounted like this. Don't ever do this. Coils need an absolute really good ground. It looks like there was a plate on here that held these together at one time. That's now gone. So we will be fixing that and get rid of this 14 foot of coil plug wire as well. But the motor seems to be in good shape. Kicked it over, had good compression. We have not tried shifting it or anything yet. Love this octagon oil tank on here. And look at this mess. These wires are old, probably the original wires, some of them. But they're so old, they're so spliced together, they're so ate up from the mice and the age. What I want to do is rip all of this out, start with nice, clean, fresh wires, and go from there. Some of the wires, like the ground wire and the hot wire, where are you at, hot wire? The hot wire look to be in good shape. We'll be able to use those again. These 2 wires here actually run into the frame, and I chased it up and they come out here for the headlight. So probably I'm thinking a high and low beam, and then the ground is inside the housing. I hope one of these is not ground, because then you have, you know, they're the same color wires. So I think it's probably a high and a low beam. Now, as far as switches on these, and here's the brake light that runs up here to this with the, I like that. Then you got two switches here. I would say that's probably the beam, and then on and off. That's all that you've got here. This is wood. We'll be replacing the wood because, you know, the wood just ages, but it did kind of, I guess, match well. And then you've got your kick start here. I did find this right here, bracket here, is broken. I believe that's just affects the choke. Let me choke it and see. No. Okay, so that would be part of the throttle. I guess when you move the throttle after we get it unseized, I guess this would go up and down. So we'll need to really look at that. It looks like the whole thing's broken. Maybe it still holds. I'm not sure. But it has really good, what we say, compression. So it sounded real good. I have not checked compression, have not pulled any of the plugs except one here, I believe, to test for spark. The front end is a Sportster front end forks, extended forks. So it's got the whole Sportster front end, and it has the brake as well. So that's good. And I love that headlight. Love that style of headlight. So brake there. I think that's pretty much everything. So you get an old bike, especially in the 70s, that doesn't run. They're simple. The wiring on them are really, really simple. I love it. One of the things I love, I know this is not a Harley, but one of the things I love about Harleys is the simplicity of them. And back in the 60s and 70s, even the Japanese bikes had simplicity to them when it comes to the wiring. So while this might look like a mess, I love wiring stuff. One of my favorite things to do. So I think I want to start here. I want to start here, and so you can see these switches here, the backside of them, they're in bad shape. We'll be pulling all this out. We might keep the switches the way they are, just replace them. We'll keep this wooden panel on for now until we do the rebuild in the winter time. So let's start right now with the switches. Now there, you'll see in here connectors here. I believe it might still have the neutral switch in there and stuff like that. So we'll need to make provisions for that. But we can wire it where it'll start in any gear. But if we have a neutral safety switch, that might be where it won't crank with that on. So we'll pull up a diagram, see what we have to have, what we don't have to have. You know, we don't have blinkers, we don't have oil pressure light, we don't have turn-in signal lights, we don't have any of that stuff. I did see it does have a pressure gauge here, so that's good. And then after we do the wiring and we get spark, then we will address the fuel tank issue. We'll just replace this. That's his level gauge. I like that. And then also on the petcock, look at that, man, that's brass. I love that style of fuel inlet. So there is no reserve on this. It's just open and close valve. Of course, we'll have to replace these wirings. We'll replace this filter as well. I like the clear filters so you can see. And this probably has a stone filter in it. Oh gosh, there we go. This probably has one of those stone filters in it anyway. To me, let's talk about this for a minute. The filters with the stones in them, I don't like those. What I like to use are the filters with the paper filters, and the clear plastic. You can see it. You know when it's getting time to change it. And I think that the fuel flows better through paper filters than the stone filters. I'm pretty sure that's a stone filter, but we'll get it open and see. Oh, and we've got a leak in our valve. Oh, gas smells pretty good in it. All right, so we really don't have to pull the tank right now to do the wiring because there's really no wiring that runs anywhere under the tank. The wiring that is for the coils, of course, the headlight wiring runs through the frame, so we don't have to pull this off to deal with that. But the coil wiring runs down here, through the side, down the bottom, and then up here to here. So we'll be able to save on that. We might clean it up. I do not like electrical tape. If you use electrical tape, it will eventually look like this. It'll come unraveled and it'll look like that. It'll get brittle, it'll get old. I don't like that, and I especially do not like these type of connectors. The little crimp connectors. Let me see if I can find one in here. Okay, most of these look soldered, so that's pretty good. But the little crimp ones, don't use those ever. They will disintegrate. They'll pull out. They get water in them. This is the best way to do it: solder or the solder joints. So you'll be seeing that when we go back with the wiring. The only wiring I might keep is this wiring right here, and that would pretty much be it. We might tie in right here and we'll fix all this, so there'll be new wiring up to here. We'll keep these connectors as well. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump in it with the wiring. What I like to start doing is just start pulling all of this wiring here. Oh, a fuse. Huh. That's neat to see. All right, here's the wiring for the rear lights, so that's pretty easy to do. They're probably tied in as well with the headlights. The brake light switch. Okay, it has one. That's the original, and they just put it on a spring that's supposed to pull that out. I hear the brake drum working. That's good. But I don't know. We might have to. The nut's not even on it. Might have to play with this, adjust this, get this a little better. This right here. Ouch. Not sure why there's so much cable hanging off. We can snip that off. And then your front brakes are just front brakes. They're not wired. So there's no turning on of the headlight or turning on the brake lights with the front brake. That's fine. We can just use a rear brake for your brake lights. And it's probably switched as well for the running lights in the rear when you turn the headlights on. So let's jump in all this. I'm just going to start undoing all these wires, taking these switches out, pulling up a factory diagram, because some of these wires, like your brake switch, they are the original colored wires. It's going to be really simple. It's not going to be a big project on the wires. We do need to, I was worried here, this chain is rubbing this tire. It doesn't look like it's been ridden on this tire. So I think what is happening now, I got worried. I'm like, oh no, I think the frame might be bent, but it's not. I think the wheel is just cockeyed. So we'll adjust the wheel, bring it out. I think that'll give us clearance on this chain. The chain looks to be in good shape, and there is a little bit of lubrication to it. So I hope we don't have to get into here with any kind of gears or shifting or anything like that. The shifter lever is way up. We might have to adjust this rod out a little bit just to get a little more comfortable. But besides that, I mean, the motor looks good. I love these covers and these caps. The exhaust looks good all the way around. Gonna be a loud booger. I'm telling you that right now. Oh, missing a bolt here. Oh, hey. Yeah, not good. This is zip tied. Yeah. So we'll get a nut on that. We'll get some nuts in there. Let me check the other side. That's not a good thing. All right, there is a nut on that, and our ground wire's in there. So this mounts the motor to the frame, so you definitely don't want to zip tie that in there. So this thing's probably has some memories and some good years on it. We'll definitely need to get that off. The pipes there. Yikes. So we're getting it. We'll get something probably get it up here a little bit more around there and off the pipes. Not good. I didn't notice some of these are laying on the pipes as well. That's not good. We'll address all that. Enough yapping. Let's get to work. All right, let's just eyeball this for a minute and see where we're at. And then we can start labeling stuff. Okay, there's our ground. Runs right to the frame mount. This, I would assume, is our hot. It's taped up, but it's got the little battery terminal post on it. I would assume that's our hot there. These switches, I'll go ahead and get them off and out. There's one out there, and then that runs to a ground down there, so I can't pull that all out. Boy, this is messy and oily. So we got an oil leak somewhere that's running all down through here. So this tank, or the line more than likely, is leaking oil all in here on our wiring. We know that's our headlight wires, hopefully a dim and a bright. We have this wiring. This is a off, on, off, on, so a three-way switch. I would assume that's the light wiring for the lights. It also runs into here with all these other connectors that aren't connected here. Here's another taped off one. This is probably a ground. It has another eyelet in it. Oh no, it's got a little thing on it. Okay, get this out here. There's a fuse that runs to this wire. Oh, there's another hot there. So there's two hots here. This is taped up as well with nothing. So there's two exposed, one with a little clip, one with just a wire. So before we just start yanking and cutting everything out, we just want to look, see what we got, what we don't have. Because there will need to be a rectifier that charges back to the battery. And anytime you're working on a foreign bike, now I don't know about the Nortons, the British bikes, but I do know about the Japanese bikes, the thick yellow wires. There's usually three of them, two of them in this case. That's not even connected. They will be your charging wires that's running back from your stator that's inside the case there. It looks like I can undo that connector that runs to the stator. Probably neutral switch as well, or maybe that's just a ground. I've got these two wires here. That's for the brake light. Now don't let it overwhelm you. While it may look like a mess, it's actually not. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and disconnect everything from these switches, and then I will test these switches off the bike to make sure they're still switching. If they're still good, we can reuse these. The fuse wasn't blown, so that's a good sign that maybe everything is, still working correctly on the switch. This has 4 or 5 wires going to it. It must be a ground. So the switch is pretty bent out of shape, but we'll see if it's working or not. But that's out of the way. Try this other switch, which I believe would be the headlight switch. Okay, there's nothing connected to that. It did have a ground. So we're getting there slowly but surely. Now what's concerning to me is that the rear lights only have a red and a black line coming off. One runs up here to the brake light, so that would be your brake when you press it. The other one was running into a switch, so maybe that's the running light, but maybe it's grounded in the light itself. There's usually 3 wires, a ground, a running light, and a high or brake light, kind of like the headlight as well. This wire here had all this on it. The only thing that was being really used was this hot that runs to the fuse and to the battery. Then you have this chewed up wire here that runs here, which probably feeds power. Yeah. What in the world am I looking at? Somebody help me understand this. Okay, I have no idea what that is. Okay, so now all of this can come out. We're starting to get it all out. Then we have our connector there for the rectifier. Oh gosh, that pulled out of the connector. Okay, that wasn't even really connected much. So this pulled out of the connector. It looks like it went right there to that one. Stick it back in there so we know the hole. For our rear lights, I'm going to go ahead and just snip those. It's just this one here. You can pull this out the side to get it out of the way. And now we are left with this wire that runs to the brake light. We have this ground wire that's mounted to the bolt that holds these plates on. So this probably has points on it. You got the 2 coil wires running up to the points, and then you have this one wire here that feeds the hot in the coil. So that would be what that wire is. So just like that, here's the majority of our wiring that will have to be redone. The other wiring in here, let's see, this was a ground as well. This was a ground. It runs to a little bolt down here to the frame. And then this is the hot to the coil from the key on. That's the wiring for the rear brake lights. This is the wiring for the headlights and negative terminal. Pretty much it. That's the whole bike. This is what we're going to be rewiring. Let me study on this mechanism here. Since it has points, it doesn't have a CDI box. I would assume the coils fire independently on the points. So we'll be pulling off the plate and inspection plate, timing cover plate, or the points plate. We'll be looking at that as well and making sure that it's not corroded. We'll clean that up. I don't know. It might have a digital in there. I don't know. But is this some kind of relay? What is this? Is this like a rectifier type deal? An old school one? Clack it down there in the comments. Let me know what this thing is, because this is weird. But we'll start with all new wire and let's go test these switches, clean them up, see if they're any good or not. Then what I like to do is I start with, the good ground. I'll start with the positive side. What does this bike need to run? What needs to be on? Then headlights, taillights, all that's an accessory. We can do that at the end. But right now, I want a power on, a power off. Power's the coil, and of course off that we'll run the lights or anything like that off up to this switch, and then on off. To find out what this dude is, let's fix this connector. Looks like the clip's still good on it. We'll just pull these pins out and re-pin these. New wires, of course, because these wires are hard and brittle and cracked in several different places. Just like that, the wiring harness is out of this bike. I'll go ahead and turn this to horseshoe, to ohms. We'll set it to make a sound when they're connected. We'll look at the resistance of our wires, which is 0 on this. I really like this multimeter. I got this off Amazon. It's really nice. Okay, so we have the simple, what I assume to be, okay, this is on, off, on. Off, on, okay. And this one is a 3-way switch as well. On, off, on. Huh. I'm not sure why on an ignition you would have a 3-way switch, but we do. Let me go ahead and get this jump wire off. That's the power in. Okay, the middle one. Then we'll test this switch when we go this way. Nothing. Okay. So power comes out, or power goes in here. Power comes out this side with the switch the opposite way. So now we'll go back to middle, it should be nothing. Okay. And switching down, there should be nothing. Now when we go to this side here, and we switch that way, this should beep. Yeah. Okay. Nothing and nothing that side. Okay, so this is a 3-way switch as well. Power in the middle. Nothing happens when you turn this way. It initiates this connection. And this way initiates this connection. So this switch is good, and the terminals look like they're about shot. So I would be replacing this. This terminal is loose as well. This one's still tight, but this one right here is about to go. They're just kind of, I guess you could say, riveted in, and they get loose. So this does work, but I would not use this at all. Now this big boy will go there. We'll go this post, and we'll go over here. Okay, so we got power there. Now let's switch this over here. Well, that terminal's loose too. Okay, there, so that goes that. So the way that this works here, in the middle is off, as it reads. Power comes in on this top post here in the middle, and you switch it this way, feeds this. This way feeds this. The bottom, flip it over this way, power feeds this one. Flip it over this way, power feeds this one. So you've actually got 2 powers in and 4 going out. All right, so we'll replace the switches. What we can do in the meantime is go ahead and run the wiring for the switches. But I'm about to go get my ears lowered with a good haircut. So I might just go ahead and grab some switches that I want to go on there. I do like these button switches right there on the side. Might go back with these instead of a push button or a knob or anything like that. All right, so now that we've got all the wiring out, I've decided we are going to use this switch because these 2 terminals that we need, and this one we can just run a little junction from the hot to here, and then we can use these 2 top posts for our lights and our main ignition on. So we've got that. For the headlights, I think what I've decided to do, we're going to wire it where when you turn the ignition on, the dim lights and the low beam light on the headlight and the tail light come on. Then we will wire, I found this in my stock stuff, a nice old school plunger that you can reach down and pull out, and that'll be your high beams. Pretty cool old switch. I like the way it looks. I think it'll look good. So there's our 2 switches. This was a rectifier. Pretty cool. I wonder, is that how rectifiers look from the inside? Modern ones? Probably not. That's pretty cool. So the wires here look like they're in good shape. Yes, they're old, but they're in there good. This is the ground wire here. You have these 3 wires that run to your generator, stator, whatever you want to call it, inside the bike that hook to this. harness and hooks in down by the case of the bike. And then you have this wire here that runs back, that we're going to fuse, runs back to the battery to charge the battery. So hope this works. I'm not sure. If not, we'll just upgrade to a newer top that's kind of siliconed in and sealed. A lot of oil had been getting around all the wiring, which is actually behind and kind of above the oil tank. So, of course, all this oil coming from? Well, down at the bottom of the motor, right at the back, there's a breather, and the tube is gone from that. So I would say it was blowing just a mist of oil, breathing, all up in the wires. So we'll run a line, hose off that to get that solved. But right now, let's make our own wiring harness, because it's going to be very, very simple. So we'll start down here in the corner. I want to start with this rectifier. Rectifier. So it has the 3 wires here. They are yellow. Okay. Then you have the green wire, and that goes to a ground. Now, this is grounded out here, but we need this to tie in to a ground as well. So we'll tie this in to a good ground. I think that on this harness here, this wire will redo this pin here, but it's got a good solder on it here. We'll clean this up, we'll shrink wrap it, and then we can use probably this one here. It looks like it's in better shape for our ground back to here. We'll extend this out so it'll reach, and then we can run this one to our main ground on the battery or on the frame. Okay, so let me complete the circuit here. This here is our generator or stator, whatever you want to name it. And then we have the yellow wire here, the yellow wire here, the yellow wire here. Now there's also a ground wire that runs out of here, but we're going to connect it. So this will be green. We're going to connect it over to, can you see that? Over to this ground. Okay, so that's going to be all this right here. Now we have a red wire that is running out of our rectifier. This will charge back the battery. So this will be red. And then we'll put our battery up here. Negative, positive. We'll put a fuse, which we already have one that I believe I can cut and save on. It's a 30 amp, it's a mini fuse. So we'll 30 amp, that's our fuse. And then we'll run that up to here. Of course, this is going to go to ground on our negative battery. Alright, so that really completes the charging part of it. And that's self-contained there. Now, we don't need things like a oil pressure switch, a horn switch, a neutral switch, starter motor safety switch. We don't need any of that. Speedometer lights, tack lights, right turns, left turns, none of that we need. Oil pressure lights, neutral lights, high low beam lights, clutch switch. We don't need any of that. Now we don't even need a starter solenoid because it's or starter motor, because it's got a kickstart. I'm assuming it's got points in there, but we do need to open it up and look at it because we'll need to feed power to the ignition system. So we will need an on and off switch. Okay, so we will need two connectors on this switch here. It's actually going to have three. So this will be our ignition switch. And then over here we're going to have our headlight, and it's going to be just a bright. And it's going to be the plunger kind. And it'll have power in, power out. Okay, so we can run power down here. We'll do red on that. And then our headlight here. It's going to be grounded, I hope, to that. And then we'll run right over here. I believe that wire that's ran is already a red. So this will be bright light only. There's another wire running off that we're going to run over here. That's going to go right up to our key on. So when we turn the key on, we're going to have, and I believe it's a red wire as well. So we'll have to test. That's our low beam. So this completes this. We'll run this up here and tie in there. Probably going to be a red wire as well. We'll see. Okay, so that completes our light circuit. So what's going on here? Power from the battery comes to the switch. Switch is off. No power coming out here. Switch is on. It feeds the headlight switch, and it also feeds our low beam. So our low beam should come on with the ignition switch on. We also have a wire, which I guess I could have ran off here, but anyway. We have a wire coming off here that feeds to this switch. When this is pulled out, the low beams will still be on and the brights will shine bright. So I think it'll work with both the low and the bright on at the same time. We might have to change this. So our charging, our ignition, our headlights. Now, if this has points, where should I put this? Let's put it here in the middle. I don't like to do that, but we will. Okay, we got two coil packs. All right, coil number 1, coil number 2. Then here we've got our plugs. Yeah, I know. Looks weird, but okay. So there's our plugs. So we'll have a wire here. Well, I don't know. Hold on. Man, I wish I had an eraser. Okay. So coil 1 should feed 1 and 4. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4. These are our plugs. Should feed 1 and 4, and then 2 should feed 2 and 3. So you'll have 2 wires that come off here. Okay. Now, if it has points, you'll have points in the condenser breaker in here, contact breaker. So you'll have, should be grounded out, and each one will have a ground out. Now to the second coil, you'll have a wire that should be yellow to go into the coil. And then you'll have this over here that should be blue for coil 1. If the wires haven't been monkeyed with, come here. Okay. Then you have these coils that will be junctioned together, these coil ends, and then off of this we'll get power. Okay. So we will need to tie in to this here for power. So we'll just come up here, we'll come over here, and we'll go right there. So this will be red, we'll say red as well. So our power is going to go into the coils, our contact or points is going to send ground at a certain time as this spins. So your coils are always powered, and then the ground breaks the energy built up in these coils and sends spark out. Alright, so as of now, we've got our charging system, we've got our ignition switch, we've got our headlight switch, we've got our headlights in, we have our coil, power to the coil. So there's no emergency switches in here or a turn off switch or anything like that. Now we have really the only thing left, as far as I can see, unless I've missed something, is we have our brake light. And it's round as well, but I want to make it square. Okay. So I hope we have a ground that is grounded to the sissy bar. Then we have 2 wires coming out. This will be running lights. And then a brake light. Oh, let me get this closer over here. A brake light. Okay. So we want our running lights to stay on all the time. So let's run, I'm getting kind of crowded up here. Let's run this over here and 2 here. So when the key is on, we have a running light. Our brake light is going to work on the brake switch for the rear. There's not one for the front. Okay. And it's going to look like it's got a little spring that pulls out. And switch here. We have a line that runs here. I don't know what color that is. I believe it's going to be black. I believe. And then we'll have another one that feeds to the power. And we can do the power right in here as well. So when the key's on, we have power to the brake switch. It doesn't engage till the plunger's pulled out and then feeds to here. Okay. We might have to change some things, but that is a rough thing of everything we need. Headlight, brake light switch, brake light, plugs, coils, points, generator stator, rectifier, fuses. Might need to put a fuse here. We'll probably do a 20 in here so it doesn't overload any of these switches or lights or anything like that. Okay. Tell me if I'm missing something, but I believe that is all that we need. If the headlight is grounded to the frame and the brake light's grounded to the frame, and we just run a ground for the stator and rectifier, we can run it to the battery or we can run it on the frame ground. And the points are in good condition and everything should work, should fire. Now what I want to do is go to the bike. I want to check my brake switch and verify that the colors are correct. This should be a green and yellow on this. I want to verify that my coloring is correct here. Let's see, I got my power going in. I got blue, I got yellow here, yellow up here too. I want to verify that my coil wires are correct. They're routed right. The color of those. That's easier to trace back. Then I also want to verify my headlight's grounded, my brake light's grounded. Well, I know these wires are correct color. This one is as well. And then I know that the rectifier red is colored correct as well. So let's just verify the coils. Make sure the plugs are wired correctly. I did get some new spark plugs to go in. I won't be putting those in at the moment. I will put one in just to test the coil. And I think we're ready to build our harness. Now, when you build your harness, you don't want to usually build it off the bike. You want to build it on the bike. That way you have the length of wiring that you want. You don't have extra wiring you got to bundle up and it just looks ratty under there. We also want to use good connectors. So I use these. I have them in various different gauge wire sizes. I even have the big yellow ones and the white ones that are smaller than this. Also, heat shrink is important. I got different size heat shrinks, and even some of these that have from Harbor Freight that's got the big one. So when I connect all these wires here, I heat shrink them individually, I bundle them, and I put them in a bigger heat shrink. Kind of just helps protect everything together. As far as a loom, I don't think I'm going to use a loom because there's just the wires inside the little box there are going to be so short. I will zip tie them together, but I probably won't loom them. So if all of our parts on the bike are working correctly, like this, the coils, the stator, the condenser, the points, if all that's working correctly, then this should work. If there's anything that I wired wrong that I need to change, I'll come back here, mark it out, change it, and I'll show you that. Went ahead and put the battery in, hooked the negative side up because I'm thinking the brake lights and the headlights are grounded. So I pulled the caps and screens off both lights. The rear brake light was busted, so I replaced that. The front headlight was busted as well, burnout, both low and high, so I replaced that. I had a 2003 Dyna stock headlight that fit in that housing perfect, so I put that in. And now with the battery hooked up in the negative cable on, I can take my wiring here. I verified it is grounded to this sissy bar to the frame. So one of these is low beam, one of these is high or brake. Running lights and brake. We'll see which one is that. And on the headlights that run up through the top tube of the frame, one of these is a running light, a dim, and one of these is a bright light. So what I want to do is set you back here, let you watch the brake light, and we can verify what light is what. Then at the end of these, I will label what's what, so we don't have to guess when we're wiring. Okay, you keep an eye on that light for me. I have two wires coming off this. It is grounded up here in the sissy bar. I'm hoping it's a good enough ground. I did, when I pulled the bulb out, have to kind of move the little prongs that connect to the light. So I hope I got that fixed. Okay, we're going to try the black. I'm thinking that's maybe a running light. Yeah, it looks awful dim. Okay. And we'll try what should be the brake light. Oh yeah. Now here's what I want to know. If I have running lights when I turn the key on, and I connect or hit the brake, and it sends signal to this red wire, will it still work? Yes. Very good. So we know that the black wire then is our running light. The red wire will go to the brake switch. So I'll get that labeled, and I'll move you up front and let you watch the headlight. Of the two wires here that come up through the frame and they go up in, when I pulled the housing, the connector looked good. It wasn't melted or anything. It looked kind of new, so I would assume that this is a newer addition. But let's see what we've got here. They're both red, so I don't know what's what. We'll go with this one. Okay. I'll take this one off. We'll see if the other one is brighter. Oh yeah. Okay. So low beam, high beam. Now if I leave the low beam on and I touch the high beam, yes, very good. So this here is my low beam. I will mark that because they're the same color. I don't want to get them confused again. So I just put some painter's tape on here and write low beam to the key or our toggle switch ignition. Now this one is going to be our high beam. That's going to run to our plunger switch. Oh, calm down. All right, so at least we have our lights wired up. All right, so on my coils here, I should have a blue on coil 1 and then a yellow off of coil 2. This looks to be, oh, that's really loose. A blue here and a black and gray here. A blue here and a black and gray there. Oh, okay, so they've all been spliced down here. So let me see. Okay, there's a yellow, a blue, and I'll have to cut the tape off to see the others. Okay, so these coils, wires up here have been spliced down in here underneath. So I'm assuming those might be the same colors. I'll get this tape off and look and verify. But this should run 1 and 4, and it is not. It's running 1 and 2. And then this coil here loops around, zips ties. This one here loops around. So this is running 1 and 2. This one's running 3 and 4, which is not correct. This should run 1 and 4. And this one should run 2 and 3, or vice versa. 2 and 3 and 1 and 4. So that could be a problem. Another of why it's not firing or we're not getting any spark. Another issue is these coils they're not grounded. Coils have to get a good ground. Try to get on an old tractor without a good grounded coil. You won't go far. Old truck as well. So the coils have to be grounded. What I'm probably going to do is make a plate that drops down because these coils here are hitting where they've drilled through this frame. So I'm probably going to drop these coils down just a hair and build a plate here, weld it on, or even get some metal clamps, clamp them on to secure these two coils, because you're not going to get a good spark the way that it is. So we got to fix that. Let me pull this tape off, see if I can verify that we do have stock colors. I hate electrical tape. I hate it. It'll get you by in a bind, but it should only be temporary. All right, we have yellow, we have blue, and we have a red that has seen better days. And we also, from that one single red wire, we have our 2 grays. Okay, so the 2 grays that go together would be this right here. It does turn into a red wire. That should run back to our ignition switch. It does run back there. I pulled it out a little. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it does work. Let me get you a better angle in here. So here you can see this red wire. It goes into the two gray and black wires that run to both coils. That's your power. This wire here does feed all the way back to the back. That would hook into our key on, key off ignition switch. So that's good. So you've got a blue wire and a yellow wire that runs to coil 1 or coil 2, coil 1 or coil 2. I don't know yet. I need to verify it. But I do know our plug wires are plugged up wrong. That might explain why this long wire is just sitting down here. But this is not wired right. So we'll go ahead and pull all these out because they are not ran right. You have 1, 2, 3, 4. So from the left of the bike sitting on it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Firing order is separated in the coils. So coil 1 is on the left side. That operates cylinder 1 and 4 fire at the same time. The right coil, coil 2, fires 2 and 3 at the same time. So even if we'd have got all the wiring correct and everything hooked up, just focused on rewiring things, this wouldn't ran because they had the coils hooked up wonky. So this runs coil 1 here, and then the other side of that coil goes over to coil 4, which doesn't have a plug in it because I got it out, going to test it. We'll be redoing all these coil wires because they are long. They got them zip tied here. I'm not sure why you'd use 15 foot of coil wire, but they did. So this will go in 3 and 2. Man, we're going to have to shorten these a whole lot. Maybe the coils on the stock bike, the coil wires where the coils were put somewhere else, and so they had to have the longer wires. I don't know. You tell me. All right, that's on, that's on, that's on. Let's verify. We got these two running the 2 and 3. The other one's running there. Now, I want to know, make sure they haven't swapped these coils, that this is 1 going to 1 and 4, and this is 2 as far as our wiring up here. So the blue wire from the points is the wire that feeds coil number 1 on the left. So it is here. Here's some more electrical tape. This is, yes, okay, so this is going up to coil 1, and the yellow wire, which for some reason they replaced with a blue wire, goes to coil 2. Okay, so now if our points are good, then all we have to do is run the hot to this wire that feeds power to the coils, which is already ran back here, to this wire right here. So when we put our switch in, we will run our ignition on and off right to this, so that when we hit the on, the coil has power. What we can do now is actually test it. We can go ahead and put a switch in, run from the hot to the switch, go ahead and wire this in the switch. We don't have to mount it. We can just wire it out here and actually test. We'll hit the key on, we'll go crank and see if we have spark with our tester light. So just for the time being, I ran a hot wire from the battery. It is fused and it runs to the switch. Then on the switch, I ran that wire here that runs all the way under the bike and up to power the 2 coils. I also pulled the cover off so that we could watch for spark there. The points look like they're in really good shape. So I'm hoping maybe the reason this wasn't running is they had the wires ran wrong. And I noticed that wires are just falling out of here. They're not even connected good into the coils themselves. But right now, all we're checking for is spark. We'll start right here, and we're going to look for spark as these separate. You've got 1 point here and 2 points there that run the coils individually, and 2 condensers. So I've got the fuse in. I'm going to turn the ignition on, so we got power to the coils. Now we should see points break and spark. I hear it, and I see it. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I sure do see it. Now let's move up top, and I have this right here, just a test light plugged into coil number 4, Let's see if we get spark. We get great spark, and that's cranking by hand. So we have successfully wired our running system, our firing system. What I'd like to do now is just keep going with the wiring that we're doing. That way we can work on shortening the wires and tightening them all up and making sure the coils are grounded good. But it looks like, the kind of jerry rig thing they got up there, it's working for right now. I wouldn't trust it going down the road. It's going to lose ground, but we'll fix that. But right now, let's just continue on with the wiring. Now we know where our brake lights are, our back lights, our front lights. They're working now. We have our ignition wired. We got to repair the rectifier wires and get that hooked up and then test that. Well, we can't test that really unless the bike's running. So we'll have to do the carburetors and all that. But I would at least like to get the wires back in, fixed, resoldered, and that part of the system is done. I do have this mystery wire, and I'm just not sure what it is. Okay, that looks like that goes to a battery, and it looks like it might go to the hot. And it's funny, if you notice this in the video before, or while it was playing before, I had the battery switched backwards. So, not good. But I did notice it on the multimeter before I hooked anything up, swapped it around. So, the multimeter, if you ever do that, let me show you what to look for. If you ever run into a situation where you're testing power and testing voltage, I have my terminals here hooked up backwards. And you'll see that there is a negative up there by the DC. Negative 11.97 volts. So that tells me that I have my wires hooked backwards. So that's a really good addition that they do. When they're hooked the right way, you'll see there's no negative under the DC right up here. So if you ever see a negative voltage, you got to wire backwards. So that's a good kind of tip. This mystery wire here looks like it goes to the hot. It was on this side, the negative was on that side, although there wasn't a battery in it. And I traced it back, and it goes in here. So I don't know what that's for. Does it go to the hot? But I just don't want to. What? It's got a starter. What? There is a starter. There's a starter. We can put a starter relay and a starter switch in there. The wiring diagram showed a starter wiring, but I didn't know that the starter was hidden in here. Oh, my goodness. Well, I guess if he don't feel like kicking, now for testing purposes, that's wonderful for us, because I don't have to kick anymore or turn it by hand. Let's see. Awesome. Well, now we can just use that. I know you're probably laughing at me right now, but I did not know that. Now I do. I guess sometimes you just need to touch stuff together to figure it out. I got the second coil done. I made these spacers out of some old Harley Davidson handlebar bushings. Cut them in half, and they gave me a good solid ground. So these are on here. I might run another bracket around here later on, but I think this will get us by just for now. Remember, this winter we're taking this all the way down the frame and rebuilding it. So now we're ready to go back with our plug wires. Now I want to mention this coil has a positive side and a negative side. The markings are on the coils. The positive from the battery, when you turn the key on, needs to be on the positive side. The points are your ground. They need to be on the ground side. So the way that this works is the hot, when you turn the key on, fills this with power. Just fills up with power. It will not release this power until the points ground when they close. When they close, it grounds this coil out and shoots spark out of these plug holes. So hot goes in, builds up. When the points close, boom, it releases all that power. The points will open, it'll build power up real quick. Points close again, there's a ground, there's a connection, boom, power goes out. So that's the way these coils operate. You can't, if you hook them up backwards, you're going to have trouble with the coils. It's not going to spark the best. This is the positive side, this is the negative side, positive side, negative side. So we want to make sure we hook our wire that comes together, the red wire from the back that comes to the black and gray, I believe, that are tied together to their both positives. Then you got a yellow wire that goes to your second coil, a blue wire that goes to the first coil. Now on these plug wires, it's easier to shorten the wires from this end than from this end. To me, it's just easier. I leave these on, that way I can measure where I want. This is our number one going to run to here, and I want it about right there. So I've got these little hose clippers that came with an air ride kit. There's a wire in the center of all this coating. You'll take this cap off. There'll be an O-ring on the inside of this cap. Sometimes they get stuck. Oh no. Oh no. Sometimes they'll get stuck to the wire. So you just slide that over the wire, put it down, and there's a little pin that you'll want to feel. The wire kind of fits in there snug. You'll push up to seat that wire up against the pin. You'll close that O-ring. You'll hold the wire up, pushing up, and then you'll close this. Okay. Now for our wire number 4, which was extremely long, we can run right here, and about right there looks good to me. Take our snips, snip that off, take our cap off, make sure the O-ring's in there, put the cap on, then put the O-ring on, slide it all back. I'm going to shove that up in there good, bring the O-ring up good, flush, then while pushing up, tighten our caps. Now don't yank on this, it'll come out. So now we'll run our wire. I do have to do some taping and some rewiring up here. Our blue wire from the points, I wish they hadn't have taped them together, but they did. Or run same colors up here, but they did. Caps here were really loose. So what you can do is take a pair of needle nose pliers, just kind of close one side down, flip it over, kind of close the other side down a little bit. Then when you push it onto the tab, it'll be nice and tight. So the blue goes to coil 1, and the blue is our ground. The black and gray is our positive. Oh, that fits on so much better now. Our positive coming in, the hot, is going to be on your side. I like that a whole lot better. But now our ignition is done, besides just cleaning up. Now technically, the ignition would fire and run if the timing is right. Now it's going to all come down to the carburetor. So we can go ahead and wire our lights. We know where those run. We'll wire those into our on switch. The brake switch, I checked, it does work. I have to adjust the spring. The spring is either too tight or it's too loose. I can't find a good middle, so I just need to bend the spring out a little bit. Then we'll be ready to fire once we get the carburetors rebuilt. I'm thinking I might just put some gas in it, see how the carburetors do. I mean, the throttle is locked up. What do you think? Put some gas in it? I guess we could and just see what it does. That might help lubricate the carb up anyway before we tear it apart, and at least get those seals wet in there so they're not breaking on us. So I got a new fuel filter, new hose right here. Take this old filter off, see what's inside it. I did get a paper filter right here. Well, it's a screen. I do like the papers better. They didn't have that at the parts store, so I had to go with that. So we'll get this on. The rest of the fuel hoses look good. They look like they're in good condition. I don't see an issue. Fuel don't look too bad. It's a little gritty. I do want to open this up though and look. But for the time being, we can just do this right here and hook this up about right there. If you ever go to the parts store, I know at O'Reilly's, I don't know about other parts store, all we have here in town is an O'Reilly's. But if you ever need just like that much hose, like this right here, just say, hey, do y'all have any hose, cut off, or somebody wanted, 3.5 foot, and there's a half of a foot of hose that they just throw in a box, and they'll give you that usually for free. So let's put a little gas in. The petcock is off. We'll watch. We'll turn everything on, see how the fuel flows. We should get a pretty good flow. I've got about 1 gallon of gas here. We'll put about 1/2 gallon in. Oh, hold on. Before I do that, I've got this clear line here to replace our fuel level. Let's get over there and put that in real quick. All right. It is old, and I might have bought the wrong line. That's a lot bigger than 1/4 inch. Does have a little fuel in it. Oh no. Well, the clear line I bought is nice, but it's not big enough. Well, for the time being, I can't do anything with it like that. Let's put some fuel hose on it. All right, this come off a crossover tube on a Harley. It's a little bigger. Ow. And it's old, but it'll work. We won't be able to save fuel, but it'll work. This does no good unless it's clear. But I just want to get it on here so we don't lose any fuel. All right, now we can put gas in. I'll bring you around on the other side so you can watch for leaks as I put gas in up here. Not sure when the last time this thing ran, but the way it was wired, it was not going to run. All right, that should be enough fuel. Let's turn our valve on. All right, we have a good flow. I don't see anything leaking yet. It seems like it's filling up the bowls. It's still flowing, and it's stopped. Okay, so that's a good sign. It's not still flowing, so it's not pouring over into the cylinders. That's why I love these clear filters, guys and gals, folks. If this keeps flowing, filling up the filter, and it's been a minute, then you know that one of the floats is not shutting off the fuel and it's going over. It'll usually spill out everywhere. It'll come out here, it could come out from up here, or it could get worse, get in your cylinder. But I think we're good there. Okay, we've got everything hooked up that we need hooked up. And I've got this spark wire here now for the starter. So let's give it a choke. I can't twist the throttle. Let's turn the key on and let's give it a test. Really wish I could free that throttle up. Not sure why it's in such a bind. Key on. I do see it sparking. Hey! Hey, we got a little bit. Yes! We try the starter. We got a little bit of a burp. I hope this thing don't take off on us, but I got the switch right here. I got the oil pressure gauge here. I can see if it's doing its thing. Alright, we'll turn it off. We'll charge the battery up. It's got a little bitty battery. Put a charger on it because I did have the key on, kind of fiddling with wiring and whatnots. We will have to do some carburetor work, but I don't know, maybe if we can just get it unfrozen. I might try to take the choke off and kick it a couple times and see how that does. Alrighty, let me plug our charger up. Oh yeah, voltage was 11.9. I'll put that on the charge. Let's take the choke off. Maybe she's like a true Honda. She don't need much choke at all. Turn the key on. Oh, she's about to go. Don't want to foot it. We'll give it a second and we'll try it with that starter. Now, again, we don't have the rectifier hooked up or anything like that, so the battery's going to drain, but I just want to see if it'll run. I'm glad there's no fuel leaks. That's great. But without being able to open the throttle up, I can't really do anything. And I really don't want to pull all those carbs off if we don't have to. Let me try to loosen the cable up just to make sure it's not the cable that's caught, maybe up here in the bar somewhere. So this is in all the way up here and it's still tight. So let me back it off here. There we go. So now the cable is off and yeah, she's seized up. All right, let's try to kick again. Oh, yes. Coils are getting warm, so that means they are working. Let's see what our starter does. Holy moly. Whew. Well, let's hope that clears up. That was a whole lot of smoke. Way too much smoke. But it blew stuff all out these pipes. Just all out everywhere. So it's definitely been a while since this thing's run. Boy, I hope those rings come around. It's either valves or rings, because that's a lot of oil. Who knows how long it's set or how long they cranked on it. I just didn't. It had that real high idle taking off. It seemed to be getting higher and higher. It does have oil in it. I did check that. Oil doesn't look that bad. But I wanted to kill it right there because it was idling a little too high and I didn't want it to run off and, you know, get crazy wild. Want to start it again? Let's do it. I knew you'd say yes. Well, that sucks. Ow! Alright, had a wire. My wires to the coil, I didn't zip tie them up. They melted. That's why I was like, why did it just shut off all of a sudden like a key switch? Well, that's why. Should have finished the job and got ahead of myself. Now we know that's not charging back. There's no rectifier's not hooked up. So I'll need to repair these wires, which I was going to clean them up anyway. So now I get to really clean them up. But boy, I hope that smoke clears up. Looks like cylinder 2, just a smoke show. I might have to step out. I'm getting lightheaded. I don't know if these are, I don't know. It seems to me like maybe this spring, no, the spring's not. It's in this little arm right here. Maybe I can just loosen these nuts. Maybe. See if it'll pull them up. Maybe one of these is stuck. Oh, maybe that one. Well, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I'm hoping maybe they would, you know, pop and kind of free up. Now, I don't know. Can I take these little nuts off here? Do they, you know, do they just unscrew? And then I can see if it's the actual arm that's seized up or. So I just don't want to go twisting on these. All the cylinders are firing, so all 4 are getting fuel. The idle was crazy high, but of course, you know, we can adjust that wherever that is. And it blew stuff everywhere. So I'm hoping that comes back around. Okay, so it looks like here's the idle that works that arm. So let me take the idle down. Okay, the arm's not moving down. So I believe one of these is stuck. Nothing's rusted up or froze up. Let me just get a flathead in here and just kind of, maybe one's just like tight and, you know, maybe kind of pop on us. But I hate to do that. I hate to, hey. Okay, all right, that's working. It's not seating down all the way. Okay, it feels like one of these is stuck. They're up. Oh, I see. They're all gummed up and rusted up. Okay. I think we're getting somewhere. So if I don't have to pull these carbs off and rebuild them, man, that'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Try to get some of that PB blast on the shafts there. And I can just kind of work them in there. Because they should spring back down. The spring is on there. They're just really tight. But I'm getting movement now. I might put the throttle back on and use that to kind of go up with. I'll tell you though, that smoke's got me worried, guys. We might have to be rebuilding it this winter motor-wise. But besides that, we don't have that much money in it right now. You know? Alright, I think I'm going to hook my throttle cable back up. If I can hold my mouth right. There we go. These throttle cables can be a pain sometimes. This one's working with me though. Just going to run it in just hand tight. Okay, that didn't work. I fiddled and fooled and pried and played, and they're still really gummed up. I mean, it's better, but they don't go down all the way. It almost feels like they're in a bind somehow. So I just went ahead, pulled it off. Really simple to do. Throttle cable off, take the air cones off, loosen the boot intakes, slide it right off. Now that they're off, you can see there is some garbage in there. So we're definitely going to have to spend some time rebuilding these. I believe those slides, that's what's just catching me. They feel gritty as I'm pulling. So a good cleaning should fix all this right up and get us back on the road, or at least the cylinders running right. Now the front, when it started up, you might have noticed it smoking out the front, and it was at cylinder number 2. And I believe that there's too much of a gap here, that the exhaust pipe for 2 is just not setting up right. So we'll address that as well here very soon. But we got these off now and ready to rebuild. 4 inline carbs off, and they come right out. While I was doing that, I'm like, I need to stop. I don't even have all the wiring done yet. So what I decided to do was to finish the wiring so that everything's done. So I went to do the wiring for the stator here that goes to the rectifier. This is also the starter cable that we now know. Well, they had it routed underneath this brace here, and I found a nut and a lock washer for this. I got to get one more here. But they had it running under here and right across here, right on this chain. And so because of that, the chain had started to rub into the connectors here for this. There especially. It had just been sitting on that chain. The connectors were so bad, the wiring was so bad, we're only running 4 wires back. There's 7 wires that should be in here on stock. So what they are is the blue and red, that's the oil pressure switch. Green is the ground. White is a regulator that goes back to the lights. There's 3 yellow wires that runs to the rectifier that sends the power from the stator. There's a red and green wire that's a neutral safety switch. And so that's 7 wires in all. All we needed were the 4 wires. The 3 yellow wires running back to the rectifier, regulator, whatever that thing's called, and then the 1 wire green for the ground. So I rerouted the wires and ran them underneath the oil tank over here, far away from the chain. I did have to use a wire loom here, and then I had to leave myself enough room to work. I could have made it a little tighter, but it'd been hard to solder inside there. Once the carbs are on here, this will set down in here. You'll never see it. On the starter wire, we've got to reroute this. So I'm thinking I might brace it up here. There's 2 braces that run out here to get it off that starter wire. I thought about, just pulling it out and let's running it, up through here and crossing over that. But it's not enough to fit up underneath that tank. You'd still kind of see it. And I just don't. If you're going to have a chopper, I like when the wiring is kind of hidden. So I don't have enough of this to run where I ran the other wires underneath. So I'm still scratching my head on it. I'll probably run a little bracket right here that this will go through, like the cable brackets on the Harleys. It bolts, but then it's got a hole, and then the line can run through there. Do another one up here to get it way up off and out away from all the wiring, or from the chain. Now our wiring in here is complete, and I'll tell you, it looks a whole lot better. This is my ground that goes to the rectifier and the stator. This is my hot that runs off from to the rectifier that feeds back from the stator and the rectifier. Once the 3 yellow wires go to this doodad, it sends 1 wire, red, back to the battery. So I put a fuse in here, right there, so that in case, anytime I hook anything to this hot, I want it fused. Now Harleys did that in the newer models by adding a maxi fuse, and that's great. But I don't like to run just anything that's not fused off this. You remember when we had it running and my wires got melted up here and it died instantly? Well, the reason for that is it popped this little fuse right here. I'm so glad I put that in. There's a little 30 amp mini fuse there. That's the main fuse for all the wiring on the bike. So if a headlight goes wonky, a tail light goes wonky, the stator goes wonky, the wiring in the ignition goes wonky, it's covered. Also, there's another fuse for the stator. If it overloads, if it does anything to damage the battery, that fuse there will pop right there, and then we can replace fuses. So it's a lot safer this way. Is it the cleanest? No, but it's a whole lot better. And now everything's back together and everything is wired. So now when we come over here and we hit our switch here for on, we now have headlights shining there, and we now have backlights here. When we pull this plunger here, we get our bright lights there. Here's that old fuel filter. I was correct, it was a stone filter, and it doesn't look that bad. I mean, there's some flakes in there, but it was surprisingly better than I thought it would be. So there's really no rust, I suspect, in that tank at all. But again, I just don't think these flow as good as a screen door paper filter, but I promise to show you that. I could spray this off and reuse it on something that isn't sucking up 4 carbs at once. Single carb, this would probably be good. 4 carbs takes a lot of fuel. So all the wiring is done, and I wanted to do that before I started in on the carburetor work. And the primary reason for that, for stopping with the carb work and finishing the wiring stuff, is that this video is probably already going to be well over an hour long. Time I edit it, it's about 5 hours of footage, and I'll cut out all my umps and ups and scratching my head. So I think this is going to be a part 1. Still got a lot to do. So part 2, we're going to rebuild these carburetors that we have off here. Get into these birds, get it operating right, get it throttling right, get it choking right, get everything clean in there. Tank looks to be clean. The fuel filter doesn't look bad. We might flush it with a little bit of gas. I was able to stretch that fuel level thing here, hose, on, and it's working good, and you can see the fuel level now, so that's wonderful. So we got to work our carbs, get them on. I hope that cylinder 2 comes around and stops smoking. If not, we'll be getting into the valves on these and at least checking valves. I didn't hear any clutter or clanking, so maybe cylinder 2 was just dumping a lot of fuel in and causing smoke. I don't know, but we'll get into that. We do have to cut these tabs off to fit our King Queen seat on. We got to line the rear wheel up. I don't know if this thing has brakes or not. We got to go through that. We're going to change the handlebars out to some standard bars kind of, but he wants them rabbit ears, you know, peeled back. So we're going to try to do that. I'm thinking we can bend them to where we want them. I've been thinking maybe ratchet strap, maybe 2 big long poles. I don't know. We're going to try it. They're just some old bars I had laying around. I think I found our oil leak and splatter. I thought it was a vent tube, but the oil outlet for this tank that runs back to the motor was rubbing up against the battery case. They had the valve, the outlet spout, cranked in a little too far, so I moved that back out, and it looks like that solved our problem. So that's going to do it for this video. We'll pause here, be back next week. We'll be in the carbs, we'll put on our seat, we'll bend our bars, we'll check our brakes, we'll line everything up, and hopefully the smoke will go away and we'll take it down the road. But even if it doesn't, at least we're fumigating for mosquitoes. Do me a favor, tell your mama now I said hi.